Hey everyone, welcome to this compliance breakdown. If you're a young professional trying to make sense of federal drinking water and plumbing rules without drowning in a sea of legal jargon, well, you're in exactly the right place. We are going to dig into the regulations and translate them into simple, actionable steps for your business.
To keep things simple, we've broken this down into 5 quick steps. We'll start with the safe water baseline, then decode what lead-free actually means, look at what's exempt from the rules, walk through how to prove your compliance, and finally, look at the very real costs of ignoring these laws.
All right, step 1, the safe water baseline, or separating the mere guidelines from the hard mandates. So right off the bat, you've got to understand that federal water regulations basically fall into 2 completely different buckets. On one side, you have aesthetic guidelines. These are just broad recommendations for how water looks, smells, or tastes, like its color or iron content. They're goals, really. But on the other side, lead mandates. And let me be perfectly clear, the rules about lead in your plumbing components are absolutely not suggestions. They are strict, heavily enforced federal laws. You literally cannot opt out of them. Which brings us to step 2, decoding lead-free and figuring out what the law actually requires from you. Okay, so when you hear the phrase lead-free, your brain probably jumps straight to 0 lead whatsoever, right? Well, practically speaking, in manufacturing, absolute 0 is almost impossible to hit. So the government actually uses lead-free as a legal threshold. Instead of dealing with crazy mathematical formulas, just know this: regulators only care about the specific parts of a pipe, fitting, or fixture that actually touch the drinking water. In the industry, we call those the wetted surfaces. For your standard pipes, plumbing fittings, and everyday fixtures, the average lead content across those water-touching surfaces cannot go over a tiny, tiny fraction. We're talking just 0.25%. That is your magic number. So if you take all the parts touching the water and average them out based on their surface area, it has to stay at or below that 0.25% limit. But wait, it gets a bit stricter. If we're talking about the materials used to glue those pipes together, specifically solder and flux, the limit drops to exactly 0.2%. Regulators are super strict about this because solder and flux are literally holding the entire system together, and they really want to minimize the risk of anything leaching into the drinking water. And here's the kicker. If a manufacturer makes solder or flux that goes over that strict limit, they can't just quietly slip it onto a hardware store shelf. No way. They are legally forced to slap a massive, unmissable warning label right on the packaging. That label has to explicitly say that using the product in human drinking water systems is flat out illegal. There is 0 room for ambiguity. Moving on to step 3, the exemption zone. Let's look at where these rules actually do not apply. Now, you're probably thinking, does literally every piece of pipe in the world need to meet these strict limits? Thankfully, no. The general rule of thumb is actually pretty straightforward. If the water flowing through the pipes isn't meant for people to drink, the strict lead limits usually don't apply. Think about things like an industrial manufacturing plant floor or a massive outdoor farm irrigation system. If it's physically impossible to drink from it, or if it only handles stuff like compressed air, refrigerants, or chemicals, you're generally off the hook. And, surprisingly, there are some everyday items that get a total free pass too. Just take a look at this list. Toilets, bidets, shower valves, emergency eye wash stations, and even fire sprinklers are totally exempt from the lead-free certification. So if your business happens to import sump pumps or huge 2-inch gate valves for water mains, you can breathe a sigh of relief. You don't have to jump through the rigorous lead-free hoops for those specific products. All right, step 4, proving your compliance. Let's walk through the certification roadmap. If your products do supply drinking water, you can't just promise they're compliant. You have to formally prove it with a rock-solid paper trail before you can legally sell a single unit. For most companies, this is a 3-step dance. First, you have to hire an accredited third-party auditor to independently test your products. Second, you get official certification proving you hit those tiny 0.25% or 0.2% targets. And third, and this is absolutely crucial, you have to safely store those records in your files for at least 5 years after the very last time you sell that product. But hey, there is a really helpful workaround if you're a smaller operation. While the big players absolutely need that expensive third-party audit, small businesses get another option. If your company operates with fewer than 10 total employees, or if you're just making one-off custom fabricated parts that aren't mass-produced, the law actually allows you to self-certify instead of paying an external auditor. Now, self-certification isn't just pinky swearing that your product is safe. It's a formal, legally binding declaration. You have to draft what's called a certificate of conformity. It's got to be in English, signed by someone with high-level corporate authority, and packed with detailed contact info. You also have to spell out exactly how you verified your compliance, and here's the big one. You have to post this certificate publicly on your website or physically stick it in the box with the product. It's all about total transparency here. And finally, step 5. The cost of ignoring rules. Let's talk enforcement and penalties. We really need to talk about the worst case scenario here because nailing your compliance isn't just an administrative chore, it's literally protecting your entire business from severe federal actions. So, what happens if you just don't comply? It's probably the most important question any young professional can ask. You might think, oh, it's just a paperwork error, no big deal. But trust me, when it comes to the public drinking water supply, the government's response is incredibly aggressive. If you ignore the lead limits or mess up your record keeping, regulators can and will drop the hammer. They have the authority to issue injunctions that completely shut down your sales overnight. They can hit your business accounts with massive civil fines. In really severe cases of negligence, they can even pursue criminal charges against individuals. Oh, and they can demand to see all your compliance documents at a moment's notice, and you have to hand them over immediately, exactly how they ask for them. So as we wrap up this guide, I really want you to take a hard look at your own company's supply chain and paperwork. Ask yourself honestly, if a federal regulator walked in for a surprise audit right now, are your documents ready? Because when we're talking about public safety and drinking water, simply assuming you're compliant is a massive risk. You have to be able to prove it. Thanks so much for joining me today, and hey, make sure your paperwork is as clean as your water.
If you found this helpful or want to stay updated when this regulation changes, subscribe and support the channel. And if you need the full technical details on this CFR, click the link in the description below. See you next time.